Hey, hey. Tobago updates. Na, 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 na. Good morning, Tobago. Na, 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 na. Wake up with Candace and Denicia. Let's go, go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up to a brand new dawning. As the passion start to rise, the energy fill the skies. I say thanks for favor to wake up and hear my neighbor. 60,000 people strong, and the vibes is never.
Good morning, and welcome to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. I mean, I can't even help but smile because it's always a pleasure to sit here and have those discussions and ask those questions that you, the people of Tobago, want to know. I'm happy to be back, and I want to thank Candace Jackson for holding it down for me while I was not here. And thank you so much, Ria, for such a hearty introduction. Now, this morning, as we continue to celebrate women in this International Women's Month, last week we had a number of powerful women on talking about a number of things from business to politics to leadership and just life in the role of a woman and in the society today. And this morning, we're going to continue along those veins while sticking to our topic on Tuesdays of business and politics. And this morning, I have had the pleasure of sitting with one of those very powerful women here on the island of Tobago, a woman that has made her contributions in a number of areas that span a number of sectors here on the island. She has impacted culture and festivals in the earlier parts of her days. She's even done a little thing or two where teaching has been concerned, because she started off at the Bishop's High School, if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Lois Leslie, and the things go on and on. Welcome this morning. We are so happy to have you. You have done so much already within your time here on earth. You have contributed so much to the development of the island and to business. You have been there at Cove, where you served as the chairman there, not so,
CEO.
The CEO, sorry, at Cove during that time, 2018 to 2020, which was a really pivotal time in Tobago's infrastructural development, and especially where industry is concerned on the island, moving us from just the philosophy of development into actual tangible steps towards really developing business on the island and having us step into a place of being a bit more competitive when we talk about Tobago's place regionally and globally. Now, you also currently serve as a valuator. You work in property. I mean, you are an organizational developmental specialist specializing in training and development. But at the heart of it, you say one of the things that lie as a passion for you is culture. And there's some way that you have found the ability to weave culture into the fabric of everywhere that you have went and everywhere that you sit. This morning, we are very grateful to have you here as you come and you sit and we chat about business and politics. And from one young woman looking on at the accomplishments that you have had in your journey, I am excited to have this conversation this morning. So again, welcome. And it's a pleasure to have you here.
Good morning, Chanel, and good morning to your viewing audience. I want to say thank you. The pleasure is mine. The honor is mine to be here. And, as you're making that introduction, I'm wondering who it is you're talking about, because, you do things in your little spaces, and because I feel it's important to make a valuable contribution to whatever space we find ourselves in, all right? And so I am just grateful that sometimes along the way, efforts are appreciated, and you could look back, and the gratification comes from knowing that you've been able to support, and in particular for me, young people are extremely important in the mix, and being able to contribute to their development along the way, that's enough for me.
Excellent. And we can't even sit here this morning to talk about everything that you have done, because I think that would take up the bulk of the interview. But there's a concept now that we, the young people, tend to purport of giving people their flowers now. So we want to give people their flowers, and it is time that we take the time out to give people their flowers while they are alive. And hence the reason you are here this morning. And you have done quite a number of things, but specifically when it comes to business on the island, you have been pretty successful in your own right in having business sustainability, meaning your ability to be in business for such a long time and prosper. What are some of the principles that you think you have developed over time that will the basis, that was the basis for your success?
I think there are a couple of things. One, it's the willingness to learn. And so that desire to know about organization, that's key. How do you take pieces of different things? How do you use different resources, bring them together? And how do you plan? How do you execute? That for me is core. So in terms of planning and organizing, it's key. And in terms of what I call pillars of business, not just me, people, process, products, those are the key to success. The people are important, the people who you work with, the people who you serve, how you execute your business, the processes you put in place, all right? And the product, the quality of what you deliver. Those are key. And they vary across different sectors, different industries, but the basic elements are the same.
And you really support the notion of business sustainability, not just in your own personal capacity for your business, but this is something that you continue to teach businesses as you go along. Because as I said before, you are also an organizational development specialist who specialize in training other business persons for sustainability. How do you define business sustainability on a whole?
Well, when we talk about business sustainability, it is about using the resources that are available, but ensuring that we use them in responsible ways so that there's longevity, there's continuity. So we protect our space, we protect our environment, because the environment breathes life. And therefore, it's important that as we grow wealth and develop, we ensure we protect and we preserve our environment.
And you have spoken extensively about ESG. You're talking about the environment, sustainability, and governance. Tell us a bit more about that particularly.
Okay, so we talk about ESG, and as you just said, these are concerns, environmental concerns, social concerns, and governance concerns. So, and in a nutshell, for example, Forbes says, and I will quote them, it's a strategy you use. Basically, you put your money to work where the companies that use the resources strive to make the world a better place, in essence. And so the environment, I mean, we just have to look around. We don't have to look far. We're having issues. We have landslides. The climate has changed, and the challenges are different. Our beautiful coastal areas are under pressure. At nights, we into March, but the nights are still very cold, very unusual. So things have been happening very subtly, and now it's in everybody's face. And it's interesting that many of the issues that cause the problems that we're having don't originate here. But because we are small island states, okay, we are impacted and we are even more challenged to mitigate. And so the environment is important. How we use resources in sustainable ways that ensure that we don't overuse. I think about, for example, we have an industry, the crab industry. Over the years, that has been under pressure because we've caught too many of the crabs, too many young crabs, not ready enough for market. These are the little things that make a big impact. And as you say, one drop fills bucket.
Correct.
So as we pile them up, innocently sometimes, and sometimes we've just lost that sense of concern for others.
And
we have problems.
when we hear about climate change, it has been used as such a buzzword of recent that people often forget the direct impact. And you've highlighted a number of the direct impact that we are seeing here on the island where we talk about coastal erosion and a number of other things. But for some reason, this does not necessarily resonate with businesses. People think oftentimes that this is the responsibility of the government to ensure environmental sustainability. So tell us a little bit about the role that business persons should play where environmental sustainability is concerned.
And there are a number of little things. How we use energy, okay? And COVID has taught us, for example, during the COVID, one of the things we had to do was to shut down the air condition systems. Better use of our energy resources. How we dispose of waste. And even as business people, sometimes you have a supplier, a service provider who comes in and takes your trash out. It's important for you to also know that that service provider is disposing of the trash responsibly. So like you say, your business, your concern doesn't end when the truck moves out with your stuff. It's important to know that they're not littering and blocking up the waterways and things like that. These are some of the things as business people we have to be concerned about. When we establish structures, compliance, building regulations, environmental regulations.
This is an area of a lot of contention where buildings are concerned for businesses, and you would know because you are heavily involved in the real estate and the valuation. We have businesses building buildings and then looking for approvals after. How does this impact the environment, and how does it impact even the real estate market? Because we have a situation where people are doing and then asking, as opposed to asking before they do.
Absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit about that and how that relates to environmental sustainability, the whole idea of doing before we get the permissions.
Well, the whole thing is about planning development. And that's part of the sustainability piece, right? You have to plan development. And therefore, the statutory authorities are there to guide because, again, it's a science. It's been studied. Things like drainage, things like where you place your buildings and so, those are important. So here's the thing. Within the last 2 years, when the rains have come, what have we noticed in terms of flooding in Tobago?
We have seen some floods.
We didn't know about that in Tobago,
before,
but
exactly.
it is dramatic. And it hasn't happened overnight. But now it is so obvious that we are in a place where we have to act. And therefore, even from the regulatory authority standpoint, it's important to look at these things because these are the things that impact not just the businessman, but everybody. You drive in your vehicle and you have challenges.
But there's a whole cultural aspect of it's better to do and ask for permission than to ask and get a no. So it's better to do and then say sorry for what you have done than to go ahead and ask for permission and then you get denied the permission to do so. I think that's a cultural thing that we have here. We have people adding on to their houses, adding businesses to residential properties, So, and that also has a community impact. So talk to us about that, the connection between that sustainability and the community impact where the environment is concerned. We look at it from the wider view of how it impacts, the entire island, and we see how, it impacts natural disaster. But even from the community building perspective, talk to us about that community sustainability.
The communities are key because that's how we live. We live in communities. We are a small island. We have small communities. And so sometimes, listen, the only constant is change. We have to change mindsets, paradigm shifts. And so do and then ask for permission. Just understand what it is doing, what is happening, not just to other people now, but it's impacting you in your businesses. Because it's
property
absolutely.
Well.
It's impacting your property, other people's property.
How developments that are happening around the area, damages their property, how it impacts, their property.
The landslides, the everything. So, and again, enforcement is going to be important, but way beyond the enforcement, because we should not be in the place where enforcement is the key. Education. education, understand how it impacts you, how it impacts me, right in the village. You know, how do we get around this? What are we doing? What did we do in years gone by to prevent this happening? And so we need to revisit some things. We need to rethink. And the communities, you know, like I was saying to you, for me, I think it's important in this whole effort for us to wake up our communities even more.
Right. And that, as we touch on that, we can move into the whole S in the ESG. And we talk about the social aspect of business sustainability. And one of the things, similarly to the whole environment, people think that environmental sustainability often is the responsibility of the policymaker. People feel like social development and social security nets are, you know, specifically the responsibility of policymakers and politicians as well. But a lot of the times, businesses are calling on communities to support them. But the question lies, how are businesses supporting the community? So touch a little bit on that for me as we talk about business sustainability and the social aspect of that, how the community comes into play.
Well, when we think about what a community is, it's really a group of people living in close commune, adopting similar a value system, cultural traits and ethics, and attempting to live productively and harmoniously. The business community is part of that community. And so, yes, that support must go two ways, all right? And being a good neighbor in the community, adopting communities. And that is important because these are the communities that you, as a business person, want to be sustained in order for you to have that continuous flow of income generation in your businesses, all right? So, again, when we talk about the social, it's about our relationships, how we relate, how we help each other, how we teach each other, all right? And it's important from in terms of the ethics that businesses employ when dealing with, you know, other members of the community. I talked about the communities. When we see our community centers becoming, once again, and our multipurpose complexes, becoming a hub of activity. Those sometimes are the nesting beds of businesses, small, informal businesses that really, sometimes are really the bedrock for us, small island. And communities are powerful because communities drive enthusiasm, they drive ideas, they drive innovation, you know. And so the policymakers are there to support and to provide the infrastructure. But certainly, it is the people in the communities that make the difference. They are the ones who determine where we go as an island economy, where we go as that vibrant Tobago beyond.
But let's just be a little bit honest and realistic. When we talk about corporate social responsibility, we often think about the huge corporate firms, the ones that are able to, you know, pay a large number of employees. And, you know, we think these are the ones that have a social responsibility. But how do we begin to entrench the idea into even the small business owner that you have a social responsibility within your community?
The how. I think that is what has been beating us for a little while. And introspection is important because we need to come together, we need to talk. We've seen efforts of that recently, and that's awesome, right? But you're right, it is not just the large corporation. So let me give you just a simple example. The farmer in the village, there's a school in the village. There's a little agri space in the school. This is where we can pass on that love for the land and the respect for the land, and to teach and to inculcate that sense of agriculture, food sustainability. Again, one drop, one drop.
But how do we create a culture where people become less dependent on the government as we get into the whole conversation of governance? and begin to understand that the responsibility for development and the shifting of the economy is one where it's a dance. So we all have to join the dance. It's not necessarily just one person goes up and entertains, but it's a dance that we have to all take part in. We all have a role to play, especially the business community. Um, how are we going to go about changing the culture of simply just thinking that the development that we so desire is on the responsibility of the government?
That's an interesting question, and that is something that we could sit and talk about endlessly. And for me, it has to start with self. It has to start with, we talk about being real. It has to start with us understanding as a people the value of work. And to understand and appreciate and agree that in order to move from where we are, since we grumble all the time, means that there's some things we're not happy about in our space. But how do we move from where we are to where we want to be? And each has to ask self, what is my contribution here? What is my responsibility here? So again, I talk about the waking up of the communities. And so we have to start having these hard conversations, honest conversations. And then there's also the need sometimes for some decisions that may not necessarily be the popular decisions, but in the interest of our space and sustainability, sometimes those are required.
I totally agree with you, and as you spoke, some ideas began to come into mind, and I was thinking about, even as businesses go to get financing, whether it be from the government or from the banks, there should be some aspect where they are responsible for giving back to the community as a requirement for the financing. So there should be an aspect of, okay, if you are indeed coming for this money and you want to do this, you have to show us that this portion of the contribution goes back into the community some way, in some shape or form, that allows for that community sustainability, whether it's a requirement to employ members of the area that the business is located in, or whether it's a food establishment that commits to eradicating food waste by donating the food to the less fortunate after a day's work when they have food left behind. These type of things that we can put into place can really help to establish the community, while not necessarily forcing businesses to look into their community contribution, but creating a culture where business is not just for profit, but for overall community and economic development on the island.
Definitely, definitely. And, even from the standpoint of, agencies providing capital support, financial support for young entrepreneurs, or young age is a number, for entrepreneurs who have that desire to be in the productive sector. Incentives for those whose organizational structure is such that it pays enough attention to the environment and to practices that will support and sustain the environment. So there are I think a number of ways, but again, we have to come together and look at ideas. Not every idea that is working elsewhere will work here. But let's look at us and tailor our practices to suit us, what we have, where we've been, what our challenges are, and
also from the governance perspective, there is the importance of having the administration of the day, the leadership of the day, understand the importance of stakeholder consultation. You talk about the fact that the ideas don't necessarily come from the policymaker. Oftentimes the ideas are in the community. Sometimes the ideas are on the talk shows as we sit here and we ventilate a number of ideas. But there is the importance of listening to the public.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about the importance of that stakeholder consultation, and how, that continuous communication with the citizens is important in the whole governance aspect of that ESG model that you talk about when we talk about the environment, social, and governance in the whole scheme of business sustainability?
Well, it's important because when you look at the role of leadership, is to you guide, you direct, you put systems in place to support a direction that is agreed upon. All right. In terms again in the community, every time we have an opportunity to meet and talk and touch, that's value right there. Personally, for me, I will say that there comes a time when we meet, we talk, but the action, if we don't, the action is key. And even while we take action, we continue to talk because we always have to reassess. All right. But I think those forums are really awesome. And I think a lot of good ideas, information, and it is an opportunity as well to impart information to communities, to heighten awareness of these same ESG elements we talk about. Sometimes we are accustomed doing things in a particular way, but until someone takes the time to engage us and say, listen, I know this is how you're accustomed doing it, but take a look at what are the ramifications. So education is important. And these are opportunities for informal education, all right, that go quite a long way in terms of changing behaviors, changing mindsets, and changing some aspects of the culture that we feel could be improved.
Definitely. And I want to stop here for us to take a little break and come back when we get back, we talk more about how women have been impacting business globally, regionally, locally, just as yourself, and the impact that they are having on really shaping the society. So guys, we'll be back really soon, right after this short break.
Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Candace and Denasia.
Let's go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. This morning, we've been chatting with one of the powerful women here on the island, Mrs. Lois Leslie. And we have been talking about business, sustainability, and the environment, social, and the impact of governance on how businesses operate here on the island. You know, we've touched on a number of things, and one of those topics that we've discussed a little bit is, you know, the importance of businesses taking on some of the responsibility that has often been deemed the government's responsibility. When we talk about environmental sustainability, interacting with the community, and just giving back. And as we move forward, we want to touch a little bit more on the International Women's Month. And we are talking about a number of women who have had great impact on you personally, but has had a global impact in the areas that they have functioned in. And one of the women that you highlighted was Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And tell us a little bit about why you would have highlighted her specifically, because you told me a bit about her.
Well, she was actually the first woman elected as a head of state in an African country. All right, she was from Liberia. But she had a powerful message, and it says, the size of your dreams must always exceed your current capacity to achieve them. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Well, and you know, we hear that all the time, but we never knew that saying came from a black woman, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and
yes.
She was from
Liberia.
And we always hear that, you know, if your dreams are not big enough that they scare you, then that they're not big enough. Now, you have impacted a number of young women, and you have been impacted by powerful women. And what is one of the, give a message to the young women here on the island, especially a lot of young women that are in business, right? People are sacrificing their mothers, their daughters, their students. A lot of them work full-time jobs, but they have such a huge dream that often scare them. And sometimes here on the island, we have this small island mentality where we often think sometimes it's better I don't even say what I want to do. I should just hush my mouth and don't say anything because you're so afraid of being discouraged by other persons kind of putting their own um, subconscious fears onto you. Tell young women, how do we overcome this idea of kind of, sheltering our dream or sheltering where we want to go because of that fear about what would people say, I didn't come from it, or, I may not be the one who looks like I have the capacity to fulfill.
Okay, so I usually say a couple of things. One, there's only one person who can walk your journey, and that's you. Secondly, when you have a desire to do something, that didn't just come out of nowhere. It was divinely placed there because within you is the potential to achieve that. So it's a question of not underrating yourself, but finding your power and standing in your power and understanding that life will cooperate with you when you signal your intention. Just ensure the intentions are good intentions. Ensure that as you walk, you don't walk for yourself only. But again, you walk in a community, and therefore your efforts must also impact and benefit others. And I always believe a woman or a man's talents always makes room for them. So it is about understanding too that others who may try to discourage is because sometimes they need some encouragement too, because they have some unfulfilled dreams. So hence the reason why as women and as young girls, we need to support each other. We need to find that well that will provide the nutrients and the strength and the nourishment to understand the power within ourselves. And we ask that the men in our space continue to do better every day, to open, make room, and ensure that we are provided with a platform that allows for equity and allows us to be our best selves.
And you touch a little bit there on some gender equality, especially, as a female boss being in a number of different industry. You were the first ever chairman of the Tobago Festival Commission. And that was during a time where I would like to think that there were not as much powerful women in such powerful positions at the time. Tell us a little bit about, from then to now, have you seen a positive transformation where that gender equality is concerned in business? And how can women, you already spoke about men making room, but how can women also contribute to making it easier as well for other women in leadership?
Mm-hmm. What immediately comes to mind again is we are sisters, support each other. Replace fear with faith in ourselves and what we are able to do as women, as sisters together. We are a nation and a Caribbean region of powerful women. Women have been in business from centuries. If you go back and you hear about the higglers and the hustlers and the traffickers, now when you Google trafficker now, you get a whole different dynamics to that. It's about human trafficking and so on. But women have really been providing backbone support for the development of our society and our economy, all right? And it's just that some areas have been male dominated. Now women are forging pathways. So yes, the impetus grows and the power of the united female is kind of invincible, but it doesn't minimize anybody else in the space. It just says that. And hence the term equity as opposed to equality, you know. It's about providing us women with the resources. And even among women, the resources required are different. So that we all, at the end of the day, will have the best chance of success.
And who are some of the women within the region that you think stand out to you when you think about successful women and women that you have often looked to for a little bit of strength and fortitude along your journey?
Okay. So, I mean, currently we see, okay, a very powerful Mia Motley. But you know, I also know a very powerful grandmother and a powerful mother and a powerful teacher. And I go into the local space. I come home and I have to speak about women like Pinky Alum. I have to speak about women like Verlene Bob. I have to speak about Dr. Mack. You know, we are provided with so much inspiration by these women of strength. You know, it's not an abusive power, but it's a beautiful power in terms of empowering, being empowered, and also empowering other young ones along the way.
Excellent, excellent. And so you told me that you have a message before you go today. And when we look at environmental sustainability in relation to the R's, you know, you spoke about that, and that is quite powerful. Is this something that you created? Is it a template that you created, or is it something that you would have pulled from a particular framework?
Okay, so I pulled it from a framework. And you
Okay.
know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know,
Yes.
because everything that comes across us is, we don't even know the origins. Because you know what? When God provided us with a space called Earth and nature, wisdom also came. So the 7 R's, and if you Google, you'll recognize that people have different mixes in terms of the R's, but they are core principles. And what they're saying is, we have to rethink how we do business, rethink how we live, because business and politics is about how we live, are about how we live. We have to refuse to do some things. So for example, we have to refuse to throw the plastic bottle in the river anymore. These are some of the things we have to refuse to do because we're killing our space. We have to reduce our consumption. It's amazing. Over time, we have become huge consumers. And sometimes, some of the things we consume, we really don't need, you know. And these are the things that are also indirectly, more often, creating problems for us. We have to reuse some things. You know, if you, beautiful shoe you're wearing, you go down the road and the bottom comes off and you say, you see me, I have no time to go buy no cobbler now, a long time thing. And show that way I'm going to buy a new shoe. But you're creating another kind of problem because it's just one shoe on top of a number of other things. But if we pull it out and get fixed, give it some more life and use, we are helping to sustain our space. And if we think in terms of, if we do that, then somebody not going to have a business. No, what will happen from this new direction is that we give opportunity for new businesses that are more environmentally enriching to develop and to flourish. Repair, I talk about the repair. Regift. You for example, Christmas, family, gift giving, and you buy gift bags, and everybody gets their gift in a gift bag. So when everybody takes their gift out, pull back the bag and put it away next Christmas. Reuse the bag. And this is just a simple, basic example. There are so many others we could think about. But the notion is, as we find ways to re-gift things, recycle things, repurpose things, find new and different ways to make use of things rather than dump them. Simple, and you can be as simple as that in your home, your organic food material. Put it on a compost heap. Let it nourish the earth, backyard garden. And then it goes beyond that to the larger corporation in terms of things like your emissions, things like your disposal of waste, which we mentioned, digitization. The United Nations this year is also talking about digital, the notion of young women and girls into the STEM arena. But the notion of digitization, the paper, saving the trees, it's a serious thing. And now we've seen more than ever, these things, ultimately, there's a price to pay. Are we willing to continue paying the price? We have had so many road closures in recent times. We just take a drive around Tobago. And so I'm saying, let us rethink, let us reorganize, let us revisit, let us rejoin and come back and work hand in hand to ensure that as we want to do business in this space and churn productivity, churn wealth, we have to do it in ways that sustain our environment. All right? We have lost so much of the beauty and glory of the Bucca Reef as one great example. We have another one up in East, in Speyside. Let's ensure that doesn't undergo the kinds of trauma the Bucca Reef underwent.
Definitely.
And these are some of the things that we have to really get back to. So this little conversation was just food for thought, because this topic, I mean, I don't know, we will go on and on and on and on. There's so many other conversations to come out of this. But beyond the conversation, it's the action that we can take now to look at how we live and how we do business, but keeping our focus on sustaining our beautiful Tobago beyond.
Yes. And would you say, as we close off, that you are a powerful woman because powerful women existed before you?
Absolutely. Whatever, I've learned to hone my power because I've been taught to do that by some of the most awesome, powerful women who walk the globe. Tobago is rich.
And we have a lot of those powerful women in Trinidad and Tobago specifically.
Absolutely.
And they are really impacting, or have truly impacted, the development that we see here today. And
yes, you know. So these are some of our beautiful and powerful Tobago women. Just look at them, you know. They have. And their influence, the influence has extended beyond the shores of Trinidad and Tobago. Even some, I mean, there's so many we can't even, these are just a few. And even when you social media, and we come home. We come home. So, Annis Alfred, Dr. Mark, Beverly, Ramsey Moore. I mean, women taking, doing what they do best. Building, nurturing, loving, and just blossoming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, it has been a pleasure having this conversation with you this morning. Such a breath of fresh air, such beautiful energy when you walked into the studio,
really
lit up the entire studio this morning. We thank you so much for your time. We thank you so much for coming and sharing the wisdom, and we hope that the business community would be open to really sitting and listen as you talk more about the ESGs and the importance of incorporating it into the overall sustainable development plan of businesses on the island. So again, Tobago, you have heard it here. We have had the conversation with one of Tobago's most powerful and successful women, having her impact in her own space, in her own right, having moved from teaching to culture to being the head of Cove as the CEO. I mean, you name it, being one of those powerful evaluators in the space where real estate and real estate development is concerned. And I mean, the list goes on and on. She's one of those really powerful and impactful women here that continue to forward the development of our island, and one of those people who we are taking the time to give their flowers while they are alive. And she even highlighted a number of women who inspired her and continues to inspire her in their own right, have done the same on the island of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, and even globally. And so, guys, we thank you for taking the time out this morning to sit and chat and be a part of the conversation with us. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for liking. And thank you for choosing Tobago Updates as the #1 station for your broadcast here on the island of Tobago. Guys, thank you.
And
And it's-
before we go, Chanel, let me just stick a pin. I just want to say I'm sitting here and it is my pleasure to be looking at one of Tobago's powerful young
Oh
women.
my God.
Powerful young
Thank
women.
you.
And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you do. And may you continue to walk in your power. Not be afraid of it, but embrace it with humility and ensure that you use it not just for Chanel, but you use it for our space and the
Yes.
global space.
Yes.
And thank you, Tobago Updates.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawning as the passion start around.